Okay.
I've learned that every new community I come to has to have a step stool. I was told that tonight I had to thank Rabbi Ralph Mecklenburger for bringing us here. Hello. I'm so excited to speak with you and to meet you, but also just in the time that we've been here tonight, I've met so many others who it sounds like made this organization a reality. It sounds like when the National Conference of Christians and Jews was starting to fold, a good number of you said, no, we're not done yet. So thank you for continuing the conversation and also for really showing the impact of dialogue. This is a room full of people who show not only that dialogue is a nice thing to do and a mind-opening thing to do, but that it has real effect on the community, on the policies in a community, on the way that we speak to and respect each other. So thank you. When I was in high school, I came home to find my 3-year-old brother running around the house, screaming my favorite Jewish prayer at the top of his lungs. He was twirling around, he was tripping over himself, he was laughing hysterically, all while repeating the interpretation he had learned in preschool. God is everywhere and God is one. God is everywhere and God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Among rabbis, we don't often use the language of getting a calling, but for me, experiencing a toddler's pure joy and wonder at God's presence was as close as it gets. Here was this energetic little boy screaming the Shema, the prayer that I would say as a whisper with my eyes closed whenever I was having big emotions. I became fascinated with finding the universal ways in which God shows up for each of us, along with the vast differences between how we get there. When I went off to my historically anti-religious liberal arts college, I quickly became that student who asked everyone I met about what they thought about God. After a couple of semesters of studying religion and becoming involved in every Jewish and interfaith extracurricular activity I could, I knew I wanted to spend my life exploring the question of how to help individuals and communities towards their closest relationships with God. I knew I wanted to be a rabbi. After college, I studied Talmud in Jerusalem for 2 years, and then I continued to study at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in Los Angeles for 5 years, working with Jewish communities in Los Angeles and San Diego throughout my learning. After ordination, I spent 4 wonderful years as the rabbi of a tiny Jewish community in Shreveport, which I've heard some of you are from. For the past 6 months, I've served in Richardson, Texas, as the rabbi of Congregation Beth Torah, a 280-family conservative Jewish synagogue that was founded 50 years ago on the principles of welcoming, inclusion, and equal participation of men and women. I live with my husband, also a rabbi, my 15-month-old son, and 2 dogs. This past November, I received a call from a beloved Talmud professor who asked me to serve as the Jewish resource scholar of a retreat she had been part of for years, the Multicultural Alliance's Interfaith Seminarian Retreat. While I was hesitant to be away from my son overnight for the first time in his life, the indefatigable Cheryl Kimberling convinced me that it would be more than worth it to get a few nights of actual sleep, and she was absolutely correct. Throughout January's Interfaith Seminarian Retreat, I was brought back to that wonder that initially called me to be a rabbi. As a person who naturally finds common ground, I love that Campbell just shared he found the similarities, not the differences, because for me, I was reminded not just of the universal aspects of faith, but also the vast differences between our understandings of the divine. The theme of forgiveness in particular highlighted those fascinating divisions. While each of the religions present, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, sees forgiveness as a holy enterprise, our steps towards that forgiveness differ in substantial ways. For example, according to two of Judaism's many sacred texts, the Talmud and Maimonides' Mishneh Torah, a Jewish wrongdoer must ask for forgiveness whether the wrong was done against God or against another human being. Automatic forgiveness from God is never assumed. In fact, if a person is asking for forgiveness from another human being, God has no part in the forgiveness process until both the work has been done to right the wrong and both parties have reconciled with one another. According to what I heard from my fellow participants, in much of Protestant Christianity and Islam, when one person wrongs another, the wrongdoer can independently ask for forgiveness from God without communication with the wronged party. Similarly, those who have been wronged are encouraged to forgive a whole lot more liberally than in the multi-step process of forgiveness that Judaism prescribes. One Muslim colleague gave a reason for this difference that is entirely foreign to Jewish theology. If they did wrong, it's their problem. That's on them. It's not my problem. In Judaism, our actions are so intimately intertwined with one another's that my neighbor's welfare and the practice of her religious tradition depends on my own and vice versa. There's very little separation. Throughout the conference, our discussions on forgiveness revealed further layers of theological difference. What God expects from us, what our consequences will look like in this world and the next, individual versus communal salvation, even who God is and is not. And yet, in the way that the conference was structured, with an emphasis on conversation and questioning rather than debate and proselytization, we were able to marvel at what Rabbi Jonathan Sacks so beautifully terms the dignity of our difference. Beyond that dignity of difference, I came away from the retreat with unexpected inspiration, specifically from the Muslim participants. When Christian and Jewish participants would ask the Muslim participants a question, they would answer with absolute certainty about God's will. They knew exactly what God wanted from them, and they knew that God would always be present in their lives. Coming from a religious tradition that encourages experimenting with doubt, that kind of devotion gave me a new sort of energy and intention. What if, I asked myself, I believed with certainty that whether or not I said my morning prayers decided my personal fate in this world and the world to come? What if, rather than pacifying congregants who claimed to be agnostic, I challenged them to just at least practice suspending disbelief, to surrender themselves to God's presence, even just for a few moments a day? Since January's seminarian retreat, because of the words of these young, fully committed Muslim students, I've invited this value of devotion more readily into my teaching, into my counseling, into my personal practice. Of course, I'm not the central audience of the annual Interfaith Seminarian Retreat. Rather, our gathering is intended to inspire and motivate the future leaders of our various faith communities. Through teaching sessions, discussion groups, model worship services, and casual discussions at meals, the Interfaith Seminarian Retreat gives our developing faith leaders the opportunity to learn about how to speak to people of different backgrounds. Each year, they get to learn about the assumptions that others might not know about their respective faiths, and they get to learn about the assumptions they don't know about other people's faiths. When our participants serve in their present and future communities, they will now know at least some of the underpinnings of other people's arguments and ideas so that they can guide their congregants through a better understanding of our ever-changing world. As faith leaders so often have the opportunity to organize on behalf of the wider community, our seminarians now have the language to better connect with those who might not share all of the same values, but certainly share some integral hopes. I think back to the beginning of COVID, when access to face masks was limited. It was North Louisiana Interfaith, our local interfaith organization, that arranged houses of worship to serve as distribution centers for free masks. It was that same organization that worked with the Louisiana Department of Health to hold webinars about the importance of vaccination, aimed at devoted members of diverse faith communities. Without respectful dialogue, we could not have served those thousands of individuals who needed protection and hope at our communal time of need. With a forum like this retreat, our developing spiritual leaders are now prepared to come together in times of communal crisis and hopefully times of communal joy as well. Regardless of our theological differences, most clergy experience the challenge of holding our congregants' emotions and baggage while also existing in our own human lives. My hope is that this retreat not only helps its participants in the professional sense, but also gives participants the chance to make friends who understand the particular struggles inherent in serving faith communities. My hope is that participants now have colleagues they know they can call when it seems like no one else will understand. On our last night of the retreat, as the faculty led a final question and answer panel, one Christian student asked the dreaded question that had been the elephant in the room throughout the week. What should Christians do when they are bombarded with conflicting messaging about Israel and Gaza? While our specific views on the war may have been drastically different, we as Muslim and Jewish participants answered with a whole lot of similarity. Remember that this is not just political to us, but personal. We have lived in these places. We have friends and family there. What we need first, before social and political action, is a listening ear, a friend to tell us that we are not alone in our grief, that we have support in the world outside of our respective Muslim and Jewish bubbles. When we open ourselves up to this wonder of difference, the similarities become so much more sacred. I feel truly blessed to have experienced and helped to lead a space where we could explore both the differences and the similarities with respect and awe of one another's humanity. Thank you to all of the board members, previous and present, to all of the supporters in the room for making this exploration a reality. I sincerely hope that for many years to come, the Multicultural Alliance continues to maintain that space of curiosity before judgment, discovery before distance. Thank you.